This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Rita Lund.
And I am Emily Butler. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Even here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, the topic is loss of faith and rearing children while secular.
And now we want to tell viewers about the show sponsors.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Flats and Tops, located at 7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. When you get to the meetup, look for the silver-jacketed copy of the book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. And as Matt Delahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday we are mixing it up, sometimes with a potluck get-together in a member's home, which we call a Reflections meeting. Later in the show we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations.
Now, in the news, this just in. Researchers have combed the United States Constitution, and what did they find? Not one use of the words God, Jesus, Christianity, or Bible.
They did find this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
In the Hebrew Bible, there are instructions on owning and making property of non-Hebrew people, and before the 13th Amendment, which forbade slavery in the United States, the Constitution also had instructions on owning people, so the Bible proponents could claim that as their legacy in the United States Constitution. From the book of Leviticus in the Bible, chapter 25, verse 44, it says, "Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids." Verse 45, "Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession." And verse 46 says, "And ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondsmen forever. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule one over another with rigor."
Yahweh's followers have that to be proud of.
Well, now let's get on to the program. Since we have just met today, Emily, and we have children, I have 2 daughters. How about you?
I have 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl.
Oh, okay. I understand that you were reared in the Mormon faith.
That's right.
Where? And
Mostly in Utah, though I was born in Illinois because my parents were at school at the time. So, and I'm sorry, where did you said you grew up in?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay.
At a much earlier time. I'm sort of like a grandmother to you, I dare say.
And you said what was your faith tradition?
Well, it was it ended up being a fundamentalist type of Christianity. It was called a congregational church, but they had done their own thing and become very fundamentalist. And it was during the Second World War.
Okay.
And it was the only place that my brother and I could walk to get to Sunday school.
So was anyone making you go, or did you just want to
Well,
go?
it was just tradition to go to Sunday school. I mean, we started out at the Lutheran chapel because my mother was from Sweden, and
Okay.
Lutheranism is the state religion. And my father had died in my infancy, so I had just one parent growing up. And I remember as a four-year-old going to the little Lutheran chapel and the Christmas program, and that was the first time I ever got the box of Christmas candy, the hard candies, after the end of the children's presentation. Mm-hmm. I remember that. But then the Lutheran chapel closed when the war came on and there was all the gas rationing and everything. Mm. And the only place we could walk to was this Black Rock Congregational Church.
Okay. And did your mother attend as well, or just?
Well, she always backed us up in terms of she went to the Ladies' Society.
Okay.
You know, that type of thing.
And how long were you in that tradition?
Until I got married at that church, even. Mm-hmm.
And was your husband a believer?
His family was very, very religious, but he wasn't so religious.
Okay.
I mean, in New England, religion is very much a private matter. People don't wear religiosity on their sleeves.
Mm. They don't all have Jesus fish bumper stickers?
No.
Okay.
No. So I think I don't know if loss of faith, I don't know if I ever had faith personally. Mm. I mean, even though I went through certain steps.
It was more because it was expected?
Yes, and we lived a whole different existence back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was not the social media network, type of thing. You rode your bike as a child, and that was the confines of where you could live and where you could sure. be and socialize.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like that for me too, to some extent, because I was born in '77, so that was before computers.
You could still go outside and play.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So so what happened? Describe briefly when exactly.
From the time I was young, I mean, I sat there in church and was hearing about all these people going to hell. And I just made up my mind then. It just didn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. I thought about it, and I thought, well, if I were in Japan, I'd probably be Buddhist. And if I were in India, I might be a Hindu. And if I were reared in Sweden, where my mother came from, I'd probably be a Lutheran. Mm-hmm. And because I was born to two Protestant white parents and lived in New England, it was just natural to have a Protestant religious training. Sure. So it didn't make sense to me that everybody was going to hell except the people that believed exactly the way this church did. Mm. You know, if there was, my mother was, none of us were religious, so to speak. We kept it to ourselves.
So how did your daughters take your loss of faith, and how seriously did they take it?
I don't think they were aware of a loss of faith.
Okay. So it wasn't like they came home one day and you're, I don't know.
What happened with you? I mean, you were brought up by Mormon parents mm-hmm. in a very Mormon surrounding mm-hmm. in Utah. Mm-hmm. So
I'd had my doubts growing up, a lot like you did, and I just finally, and we lived for a year in Spain, which was interesting because I actually attended a Spanish-speaking class with a lot of very nice Muslim ladies, because they were all they were all seeking, their husbands were seeking economic opportunity, and so they'd come to Spain for that reason, and so they were trying to assimilate. So, and I realized that we did have a lot of similarities, like Mormons and Muslims don't believe in things like premarital sex or alcohol, or and in being much more modest than maybe the rest of the population, and sometimes even special clothing and things like that. So, and having lots of kids. So there were a lot of similarities, and I kind of did the same thing you did. Like, well, why? The only reason I'm Mormon is because that's how I was raised, and they could see.
How old were you then?
This was 6 or 7 years ago, and then when we got back, I and shortly, well, maybe it's more like 7 or 8, because we moved to Tennessee about 7 years ago. And something about when we got back, and we spent a year, when we got back to the States, we spent a year in Texas, and then 2 or 3 years in Utah, and then moved to Tennessee. So and something about almost as soon as I got off the plane into the States, my doubts just kept crashing up, and then I finally started getting, through a long story, I finally started actually looking into the history of the church instead of just the sanitized history that they want you to know. And it just broke. And yeah, one day, I mean, my husband knew that I'd been kind of studying it, and one day I told him over cupcakes that we were on a date that I just didn't believe it anymore. And I was really, really lucky. He took it very calmly. I mean, I know people who are now divorced because of things like this. And he just said, all right. And not only that, eventually he also left the church, and my parents left, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and 4 out of the 6 of us are now out. So that's...
And your parents.
And my parents. Mm-hmm.
Now, they had been brought up as...
Oh, yeah, very strong. My dad had...
And it goes
had
back generations then.
Yeah, my mom was in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and my grandfather was pretty high up. He was a temple president, which won't maybe mean a lot to anyone who wasn't raised in the tradition, but and also a general authority. But yeah, they took it very, very seriously, but they left too.
What? So you're on both ends. You're a sandwich, because your parents left.
Yeah.
You know, you left. Mm-hmm. And now, where were your children? Oh, you weren't married yet.
Oh no, I was. Yeah.
Oh, you were married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the kids were, let's see, I think I wrote it down just so I could remember, 13, 11, 9, and 5, which we were lucky. That's a pretty good age, because not only do I know divorces that result from this kind of thing, I know several families who have adult children who don't speak to them anymore, and because their parents left, but the kids were already indoctrinated, and so they don't have a good relationship with their parents. So we were lucky that our kids were young enough that they were, yeah. In fact, they were thrilled. Like, wait, we don't have to sit through 3 hours of church every Sunday. So, like that. So we got lucky. But that said, it has been more difficult for my husband because we haven't seen his family in 5 years because they are not happy about it. So one of his sisters has left, but he's one of 5 kids, and we haven't seen anybody else. So,
do you ever try to write to them, or?
He has some minimal contact with them, but that's about it.
So they don't see their grandchildren, or?
No.
And I think you're amazing me learning this about you. You're on, as I say, you're a sandwich in the middle.
Yeah.
But you, as you say, you've done very well in terms of your family going out also,
Again, we were really, really lucky. And now, in fact, if you want, there's a lot of things that are different, but just some of the things, we have hot tub church. We have a hot tub. So we give the kids juice, and we get in with mimosas, and we just talk about things, and it's been great. And we can go into other things, but I think, I see we have a caller.
Yes, we have a caller.
Right, we can take that real quick.
Hello?
Yes, this is Charles from Central Illinois.
Hi. Charles, is that what it was?
Charles.
Yes. I'm a casual caller, and Joe Bernhardt and 5 Foot Fours know me.
Okay.
Well, hi.
And
Hi, Charles.
and I see that today's program is on losing faith and raising secular children.
That's right.
I'm old enough to remember the landing on the moon.
Okay.
I was 12 at the time.
So that was
And one of the things that it took me years to figure out why it impacted me, but if that happened, then every religion on the world has got how the universe is structured wrong. So either thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in the national atmospheric and space administration are all reciting the same set of lies in lockstep, or the universe isn't what all the religions are claiming it is. Which do you think is more probable?
Well, I guess you know what we think is more probable because we're doing the show, but yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of different ways to reach this conclusion, and science is certainly a major part of that.
Yeah, in the Abrahamic faith, which is both Mormon, Catholic, Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and so forth, all have a tendency of trying to ignore things written in the Bible that have proven to be physically impossible to have happened.
Yeah, that's right. That's been since Galileo on, I guess, and kind of keep having that conversation.
Yeah, ever since Francis Bacon built on what Galileo Galilei started, we have keep discovering things about the way the world looks. Like more people in this year will be able to recover their eyesight due to secular medicine and all the theistic miracles in the last, century. Because we now have a good understanding of how the eye functions. If the statements within the theistic belief systems are accurate, we shouldn't need the secular medicines to do that. And yet, every time we turn it around, we keep finding failure after failure after failure. No limbs being regenerated, no eyes being restored to visual capability, and things of this nature. So that's what basically ended my belief in the supernatural.
Well, thank you very much, Charles.
As to the second part, raising secular children, probably the biggest impact you can have is teach your children the love of reading.
I would agree with that.
Because their natural curiosity will then take over, and they'll go and explore things on their own that would never have occurred to you to point out to them, and things of this nature. So that is, get them to the library, show them, sit down when they're young and read with them. Because that's what my parents did. I watched my parents turn off the boob tube and watch PBS's nature programs and things of this nature, but we didn't spend a lot of time watching the soap operas or what we now would call so-called reality TV shows and things of that nature. But they went after things that were highly interesting. Okay?
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of great resources out there, like anything that David Attenborough does or Neil deGrasse Tyson is usually very educational and wonderful. So I highly second both of the reading and the watching good information and taking advantage of what's out there. So thanks for calling in, Charles.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's see. Where were we?
Yeah. Let's see. Let me ask you that. Like, has your life been better after you lost faith?
As I say, I don't know how much I ever really had to begin with, but I have certainly I just keep my ear to the ground and I keep learning more and more, and I analyze and that gives me more to work with.
And are you open about how you feel with your children and your husband?
Well, I'm no longer married.
I'm sorry.
I brought up the children in a liberal church.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about the Unitarian Universalists, or they would have gone there, believe me, but I felt it very important that the girls have religious training of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they grow up, they're going to do what they want anyway. But to grow up with a void is not a good thing, because if you have a starting point, you can go from there,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just wandering around in the ether with having no base. And what they were learning were good moral lessons about living a good life. But we didn't talk about heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, they went to Sunday school. In third grade, they got their Bibles. They were 5 years apart, you know. And then in eighth grade, each one of them went through a confirmation class. They had to write a biography. One of them chose Martin Luther King. I forget what the other one did. But we didn't have big defining moments from a religious point of view.
Okay. And not major life, aside from the confirmation and things like that, it didn't require a lot, I'm guessing, for time or attention?
No, if Lisa, if they wanted to go to the young people's group on Sunday evening, fine. If they didn't, that was fine too.
Okay.
You know, that sort of thing. I don't know if I can explain it efficiently.
Well, I ask,
Yes.
I guess, because Mormonism requires a lot of time.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
I read a book by a woman named Heidi Hart about 10 years ago, and she had left Mormonism, and she talked about it in depth. I think she ended up, she was married, and she and her husband came to an understanding. So she, as I understand it, at least at the time, she had decided she would go to the Quaker Church.
Okay.
You know, and that was it. But I, read a great deal about what she had been going through as a Mormon and what was required of her. Tell me about your church, your hot tub church.
Yeah.
That is really up to date.
Yeah. Yeah, the kids love it. It's just there's the best parts about not being in religion anymore is that I think that there's no topic that's off limits. If they want to ask about sex, or if they want to talk about, anything they're curious about with drugs, or with we all curse a lot because it's funny. And we tell them, don't do it in public. That's not polite. But it's easier to have those conversations about what's right and what's wrong, because you can just say, well, does it hurt somebody? And if the answer is no, I'm like, does it hurt yourself? And if the answer is no, then don't do it if it's not going to hurt somebody or something. So, it's also been good, because if we'd stayed in, my oldest son is 18, and he would be on a mission right now for the church. And it also was costing us, I think my husband, well, I don't want to get into the actual number, but because the church requires 10% of your gross income is usually how we would pay it, and then also fast offerings on top of that. We were not saving as much as we should have for the kids' educations, so it was a major drain on the family resources.
See that, yeah.
Yeah, especially with 4 kids to get through school, and I'm also excited because. They're also, it was highly likely that they probably would have gone to BYU, because it's supplemented by the church. So
Brigham Young.
Brigham Young University, which is where I met my husband. And it's just painful to me now to look back on my transcript and see how much nonsense there was on it, because you're required to take religious courses. And you're also required to live by their version of an honor code, which means that you're not really having a normal college experience. Like the dress is hyper modest, and there's no drinking. There's not even coffee, and I don't know how I had 4 kids without coffee. It was just painful. But yeah, so it was not a real college experience. And then looking at the transcript and seeing Book of Mormon 101, Book of Mormon 102, Doctrine and Covenants 101, Doctrine and Covenants, like, ugh, I was just studying nonsense. So it's nice to know that my kids are going to be able to be spared that particular brainwashing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I personally, since I'm still in the kind of in the middle of it, since my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 10, I haven't felt the need, aside from kind of tongue-in-cheek with the hot tub church, like we haven't really, just because, I mean, I have heard of the Universalists, Unitarians, and they seem like they're pretty decent sorts, but even that, it's just, it was so time-consuming and so
You just
exhausted.
needed to be
Yeah,
away.
we're
Yeah,
only
yeah.
too happy to
Just-
be away from it, so, and just to relax, and that's something my dad says a lot, and he's like, I have my Sundays back. He's so excited, because he was
He was a
leader
big
of the
wig
church.
in the
Yeah,
church,
kind of a,
yeah.
yeah, he was not, a rising star in the church, and so was my husband, so they were, I mean, they'd be gone a lot of the time before
They
the
can
rest of us
fish
got up.
now.
Yeah, if they want, they
I
can do
mean,
anything.
The trout streams are
Yeah,
are stocked every week. I just read that last Sunday in the paper.
oh, nice. Yeah, but we enjoyed it, and aside from that, we do things as a family on Sundays, and we would do the zoo or the aquarium, or like there's or whatever, or just go on a hike, or go to brunch. So it's been really nice. I think they've all been, yeah, like especially my youngest. He would wake up. I'd have to wake him up on Sunday, and I'd say, "Wake up, buddy! It's time for church." And he's go, "What day is it?" "Oh, Sunday. I hate church." Yeah, and it just broke my heart, and because I was thinking too, like I hate it too, but I just felt like morally obligated to go, so we went. So, yeah, I don't know, but
I'm thinking about when you say how you can talk about anything with your children, and I just thought that's really fantastic because, well, heck, when I was growing up, you couldn't say the word pregnant. I mean,
Yeah.
that was not acceptable in good in
Polite company.
in
Yeah.
polite company, and you know, it was everything was so different, and that was just ordinary people. I mean, that was not a religious group.
no,
No, that was
it
just everybody, the way things were.
Sure.
And I think where you can so directly address anything on the one hand, and yet you can cut right to the chase and say, well, is it going to harm you? Is it going to harm anyone else? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we'll talk to them about consequences and things. I mean, because and I'm sure there are, I mean, obviously there's ways that they can be self-destructive or harmful to other people, and we will discuss that. I mean, we can be honest, and that's kind of nice, because I just think there's so many sins that are nonsense. It's just like swearing, or I mean, as long as you're not around someone who minds, or something like masturbation, it doesn't hurt anybody, or it just sex in general, as long as it's consensual, it should be up to that person and your body, your rules, and it's been nice to be able to tell them that, and because it just, I mean, you've heard of Catholic guilt. Mormons have a very similar thing going on. So
Jewish people do too.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of guilt in general. So plenty of guilt to go around. But yeah, so it's been nice to be able to free them of that, especially since my one of my sons in particular, I think, was really susceptible to it. Kind of an anxious person, and so he was definitely moving towards that kind of hyper-religious sort of mindset, where he would have felt bad about everything, and probably
Never
would
good
have,
enough.
yeah, exactly. Would have been mentally beating himself up over a lot of really very minor things, if they were even things at all.
Inconsequential things,
Yeah. So, yeah, or even like not keeping the Sabbath day holy enough, or I mean, it's. And unfortunately, the Mormon Church seems to be moving backwards, if anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's been some attempts to have them be more honest about their history and a few other things, like with homosexuality and everything. But it's not going great. So it was not going to be a good place for them to grow up in.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful every day that we're out.
Yeah.
So. But Not only that, but I'm also happy for my daughter because I was.
Now, how old is she now?
She is 14. And
I wish you well. I have 2 daughters.
She's
Boys
great.
are so much easier, I think.
I think she's great.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, they're all keepers, but she's very affectionate. In fact, we actually went. Her cousin is visiting today. My niece, she's, and we all went out for pedicures. So it was fun. Yeah, they're good kids. But anyway, I'm happy for her because she would have been taught and was starting to be taught when we left that women are just good for having kids, the usual, you shouldn't get a job. That was, again, it's like some college, that was reinforced over and over again for me. And we started having kids. Like I was pregnant within 6 months of our getting married. We were married within, let me think, we were married within 4 months of meeting each other.
Ooh.
So it was really fast because the goal was to find a spouse and start having kids. So I'm really happy that she's not going to be doing that. And she even says that she has some ambitions to be possibly a surgeon of some sort. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
She's really reaching high.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of education.
Yeah.
And certainly a dedicated type of job.
Yes, yeah. But whether she becomes a surgeon or not, just the idea that she is getting that she can do anything she wants, be
She has the
anything she
options.
wants. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm grateful that she's going to have that advantage that otherwise she would absolutely not be getting. So another positive benefit from leaving. So
I was taken with the idea of your being able to talk so openly and whatnot. And when I was growing up, back in the dark ages, these things were not discussed. You couldn't cut to the chase on anything, let alone discuss masturbation, birth control.
Yeah.
Oh, heck, it was illegal in the state of Connecticut until 1969.
yeah, yeah.
And we had to learn by example. I mean, parents didn't talk about consequences necessarily. So much modern psychology has entered general parenting to the, to the benefit of everybody. But things weren't like that we're talking about. I mean, you either behaved, or if you misbehaved, there were consequences. But you didn't think about that. It was, I gotta get a spanking.
Yeah,
that was it.
I was going to
was
say
it.
the
It was,
consequences, as I recall, were usually violence, but yeah, but, and it can be a little strange. The kids notice, and I'll point it out. I grew up in Utah, and the dominant culture was Mormon, of course. But growing up in Tennessee has its own special flavor. I mean, just even something like when when I've had 2 kids that have needed braces, and the particular orthodontist, I guess is what you call it, that did their braces, he did a great job. But every time you went in there, there'd be Christian rock and roll on the loudspeakers,
Yeah.
and I'd always think, like, don't you have any Jewish or Muslim or atheist or or Hindu patients? Like, why would you do that? There's just such a Christian privilege thing going on.
Oh, it drives me crazy.
I know, and so it's nice to be able to have those conversations with them, and even like my daughter, her middle school keeps sending her home with chastity pledge cards. This is a public school.
Oh, this drives me crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
we had none of that
Yeah.
when my girls were being reared up in Connecticut. I mean, we didn't have a Christmas program.
Yeah.
We had a holiday program.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had Hanukkah songs.
Sure.
And we did have Christmas carols. We had nothing really religious.
Yeah, and I would have so much less of a problem with it if everyone would keep it sort of like that on the down low and just be like, well, yeah.
The state is here and religion
Yeah,
is here.
is here.
Separation.
Yeah, that would be great.
They do that up in New England.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way life goes.
Oh, yeah.
So my girls, when we moved to Tennessee, I was married at the time, we moved to Tennessee for 1 year. My husband was changing careers. It turned out to be only 1 year, and then we went back to Connecticut. We were down in Chattanooga. Well, we lived up on Signal Mountain, and Chris was in the elementary school. She was in 6th grade. And early on, she came home one of the first days of school, and she said, "Mommy, why aren't there any Jewish children around?" And there were, because Chris's best friend in Connecticut was a Jewish girl.
Okay.
And it didn't matter, you know. And of course, in Connecticut, people had they had the Jewish holidays off,
Oh, yeah.
that type of thing. So there's a whole other world.
Yeah.
in East
I've
Tennessee.
heard. Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing that's been fun is just being able to teach them how to think critically, which is not entirely
That's-
something that you get in
That's
school.
now your kids are going to be so ahead of everybody else around here
I hope
because
so.
you are teaching them.
Yeah, and we've talked about things like that with them at Hot Tub Church and in other places because you don't, I mean, I didn't even realize how much I didn't know, if that makes any sense, just because I'd never heard of things like, and I listened to the Atheist Experience and a few other rationalist kind of podcasts, and there was so much like the No True Scotsman fallacy, and I'm sure, any philosophy 101 class can tell you this, but I didn't know that I didn't know how to think very critically about things, and or begging the question, moving the goalposts, and all of these other things that I've been learning about, and I've been trying to pass it on to the kids. And the other fun thing
Let's take a break.
oh yeah,
and then
okay, are we out?
Save it. All
okay.
right, we're
I will do
overdue
that.
on our
oh,
break.
yes, I
okay?
apologize.
So,
I will hold that thought.
in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is fundamentally funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 5:55 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television, Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org or ctvknox.org.
Today's show is live on Tuesday, July 11th, and you can call in on the number on your screen, 865-215-2288. While we take a short break, please watch these informative videos about our sponsors.
Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
So, we're back on the air, I think.
Welcome back.
Yes.
The atheist,
Where were we?
Oh yeah. Well, I think we have to. Yeah. I don't
Oh,
do that.
forgot about that. Sorry.
That's what you get with live TV. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 1 or 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. Find us online at knoxvilleatheists.org. The purpose of the ASK is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on now at the somewhat new location, Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919.
On the third Sunday of the month in July here. The 16th, coming up this Sunday, from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 noon at the Goins Auditorium at Pellissippi State Community College. Emeritus Professor Paul Barrett of the University of Tennessee will present a talk titled Some Varieties of the Linguistics Experience. Among the topics addressed will be the cultural role of bilingualism and multilingualism from an educational perspective. Professor Barrett received his PhD in Romance Philology at the University of California, Berkeley. In addition to serving on the faculty at the University of Tennessee, he has taught at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, and at La Université Laval in Quebec.
The second Sunday of most months is the Rationalists of East Tennessee Skeptics Book Club. The book for August is The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate by Peter Wollenben. Meet on Sunday, August 13th at 2 p.m. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it does help. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at our location at Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
So now,
Where
were we?
Yeah.
You were on. I said,
I was
remember that.
Babbling on, yes, yeah, that's fine. Let's see. Well, the other thing I was going to mention that's been really fun and helpful, I think, for the kids is just it's fun to be able to laugh about the kinds of things that we used to believe and the kinds of, even just like the cards that they hand out to my daughter. I mean, she just kind of rolls her eyes and brings them home, and she's written something funny on the back, like, my goals are to become a rock star, or I don't know, whatever she does. She has something. And the other fun thing that we were able to do is that we went to the Book of Mormon musical with the kids. So, which, it's...
I saw it.
Oh, yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, I highly recommend it for anyone out there. It has a lot of swears, but it's really super funny, and I figured since this kind of was their birthright, and that's the reason they're here and how they were raised for quite a bit of time, especially for the older kids. So and they loved it. It was really cool. It was a great experience to be able to go with them, and we laugh about that kind of thing all the time. It's nice to be able to even to show them. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but I was raised to believe that I shouldn't watch rated R movies. So even though I've been around for a while, there's a lot of things that we haven't seen. So so my husband and I like going back and watching them, or even showing the kids. And the other thing that we tend to do on Sundays after our hot tub church is that we get together and watch comedies and things, or comedians like some of the John Oliver, Trevor Noah, people like that. So it's been great. So I'm happy to be able to do that with the kids. It's fun. So,
Well, when I think about growing up, I'm pleased that I had Judeo-Christian help in terms of developing a moral sense. What the difference between right and wrong. But I think it's more important was my parent modeling, honesty,
yeah, definitely.
and being compassionate. That's,
Yeah, that's a good point, because saying to the kids, even if you do have a strong moral foundation, if you're not living it,
forget
do
it.
as I say and not as I do is not really a good parenting model, no matter what tradition you have.
Now, some religious people, they actually assert that only they know what morality is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have another call.
All right. And there are, just quickly before the call, it's nice that there are a lot of resources now. There are support groups online and a lot of podcasts and things. And there's also, I believe the book is called Good Without God. How to raise good secular children. So it's good to know that those are out there. Anyway.
Shall we take the call? Hello?
Hey there. I have a question that I'm just curious as to y'all's viewpoint in terms of the Bible? Or is it, how do atheists do that? Is it, I know that one of you mentioned that you are Jewish, so to me it's kind of like a book about the history of the Jewish people. But how do atheists do that? I mean, is there any legitimacy to the Bible, regardless of whether there's a God or not? I have two questions. That's one.
What's your name, by the way? I'm not sure I caught it.
Marcus.
Marcus? Okay. Hey, Marcus. And you can feel free to answer this too. And I kind of view the Bible as sort of the same way I would view, say, the Iliad or the Odyssey. I mean, it may be a good reflection on some of the ideas that were important in the culture at the time, and there may be historical aspects to it. And I know there are entire branches of study on that. There are people that have devoted years and years to that, and I respect what they're doing, but I don't feel like it's I don't feel like things like especially the miraculous parts have any bearing in history. I don't believe they actually happened. Let's put it that way. Like, I don't believe in the flood or that Jesus made loaves and fishes and all of that.
The resurrection.
Yeah, the resurrection. Things like that. So, do you want to add to that?
But y'all do acknowledge that Jesus was here at some point in history?
I'm not sure. I've heard arguments on that. Some atheists believe there may have been a historical figure, and some don't. On some level, and even the scholars, whether they're believers or not, and some of them there's some arguments as to whether or not he existed. I guess to me, it kind of doesn't matter. I think there may have been someone but I ultimately I really don't care, because I don't find the Bible to be a compelling, to make a compelling case for his divinity, whether he existed or not.
And that would be my. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think Rita was just agreeing.
Yeah, and that's my second question. If there was a Jesus, there were these other men that were disciples that carried on his legacy, message, however you want to put it. But if he wasn't there, then were they there? And John and Paul and these other characters in the Bible?
Yeah, it's again, same answer. I would guess that it's possible, but I mean, just sort of like, was there? I mean, there's characters from folklore now that might be based on a real incident or person, but then the origins get kind of fuzzy, and especially since record keeping wasn't the best. There wasn't a way that you could tweet out or something, like, about to go out with the disciples or whatever, or something like that. So it's obvious it's much more difficult to get a clearer picture of whether or not these people existed.
I look at it as sort of just like the Norse myths.
Mm-hmm.
They're stories.
Mm-hmm.
In time immemorial, people have asked certain basic questions, and I think religion is one way of answering questions that maybe don't have an answer.
Sure.
Sort of like, in the Norse myths, Valhalla is where people went.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
People around here, most of them think they're going to heaven.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a set of stories. There are object lessons for the stories, and I think many of them teach the good values in life. The compassion, the honesty, things like that.
The part that confuses me, if they are true, and the stories about John and the other disciples, they were all stoned or hung or beheaded, and I'm wondering what would cause somebody to make up a story about a man that didn't exist and be willing to die for that.
Well,
so here's my real question.
Look at 9/11.
Here's my real question. As atheists, do you believe it so strongly that if somebody were to come and say, your life depends on this, and I'm going to I'm not saying me, but I'm saying as an example, you're willing to die if somebody were to hold a gun and say, you acknowledge that there's a God or there's not a God, and based on that, you live or die. Would you be willing to die for what you're saying you believe?
Well, that's kind of that would be coercion. I mean, I would be happy to say whatever if it were to save my life. But going back to what you were talking about earlier, about why would they be willing to die if they made it up, that was used. I mean, do you believe that Joseph Smith was a true prophet? Because that exact argument was used for me over and over again when I was growing up. And so
Do I believe that Joseph Smith was a true prophet?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because again, that he was a martyr for his cause, but I mean, he was, and they would always say, well, what was he getting out of it? And now I think, well, let me think. He was getting crazy amounts of women, money, and respect, and up until the point that, and who knows, maybe he convinced himself that he was really a prophet, but up until the moment that a bullet went through his head, I mean, he was willing to die for it. And again, the 9/11 people, they believed it. I believe their faith was strong. I think that what they did was awful, obviously, but I think they were sincere. So, and that's I guess my ultimate problem with trying to base any moral system on faith. It can get you in trouble pretty fast. Even obviously, most people don't become terrorists or something like that. But I do think that anytime you're basing belief system on, an external source of morality, it's not hard to manipulate people. But anyway, I hope that answers your question. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not involved in a church, but I find it. I ran this off of the internet to see how many atheists were former Christians, and it's a high number amount. And then I read some things that would be, well, I got, it just didn't make sense, or this and that and the other. For whatever reason, they said no to religion. My concern with that is instead of the people speaking with their own heart, the message that is in written form, they take men's word from the pulpit that this is what it says. And I hear all the time, I mean, I've heard it on your program, that people are told that we're going to burn in hell forever. And there's not even a text in the Bible that says that. I mean, there's not.
Hey, Marcus, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're almost out of time. I'd encourage you to call back in maybe next week if you'd like to continue that thought.
Sure. Okay. Oh. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Where's our end?
Yeah. Well, time to start wrapping up, I guess. Yep. And you want to just launch into, if we do that, or?
All right. Well, thanks, Rev, for helping us out.
Yeah. You can give us feedback by voicemail at 865-272-9060 or by email at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com or on our Facebook page, Freethought Forum Knoxville. And you can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station and online at ctvknox.org.
And remember, you are not alone.
You're not alone. Thank you. Oh, 10 more seconds.
Goodbye.
Sorry, I never miss a chance to ham it up.